This episode of Now This Is Lit is brought to you by Audible. Check the link in the description to get your first Star Wars audiobook free. Everyone loves free things. Click that link. Do it. This show is also brought to you by our patrons. If you want to support the show in a different way, with just $1 a month, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/StarWarsLitPod. You can get a sticker. You can get access to an exclusive show that we do every month that's wild and chaotic and fun and something you can only get by becoming a member of the Patreon. There'll be so many more perks very, very soon. But for now, do you want a sticker? Do you want a sticker that has a Now This Is Lit logo? Because it's fantastic and I love them. But I also want to give them away because there's just a stack of stickers on my desk. So if you want one, $1 a month. Patreon.com/StarWarsLitPod. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You're listening to Now This Is Lit, a podcast about Star Wars books, the people who make them, and the readers who just can't get enough of them. I'm your host, Meg Dowell. I use she, her pronouns. And because it's February, and that means it's almost Valentine's Day, I'm talking, this week, about a book that's all about love. Because why not celebrate love of all kinds? And that's the whole idea behind Someone Who Loves You by Beth Revis. This book came out in December, and we are finally talking about it with the author. That's right, Beth Revis is back on the show. And I think you're going to love this conversation, pun intended, as much as I did. Enjoy. I have to tell you before we start actually talking about the book, very rarely, actually, when I'm reading Star Wars, or really any book, do I cry? And here I am, sitting here. I was like, a couple days ago, just like flipping through the book, like, oh, this is going to be really cute. And I'm sobbing. And I'm like, I should have known.
With the picture book.
I was like, I should have known that this is going to be emotional in the best way possible. But also, I was like, I did not expect it. So good job for that.
Excellent.
Don't know if that's what you planned.
I did actually. I'm always evil like that.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. We forgive you.
Excellent.
Let's start there, actually. This is not a book like others in Star Wars in particular that you have written. It's very unique in comparison to something like Rebel Rising. What could I not think of the names of any books? What how was your writing process for this book? What was that like?
It was really, really unique. On the one hand, it's short, so it didn't take as long. But also on the other hand, I was so nervous about getting it right that I wrote 5 different drafts of it. and they weren't just like a little different. Like they were completely 100% different. I was like, which one do you like? Just tell me which one you like. Um, so there was a little bit of stress in that. And it was also a matter of thinking of it very visually. And so I still have the paper somewhere where I storyboarded the whole thing. And I am not an artist. So like we're talking stick figures here, but I storyboarded every image just to get an idea of what the flow of it could be. And that really made a difference. But it also made me think of the story in different ways.
Yeah, it really feels like you kind of had an idea in your mind of like, page to page, or like the flow from beginning to end, especially at the end. That's what made me cry. I got to like the last couple of pages and I'm like, stop. Stop.
I figured it was either going to be the end, or there is a scene where Leia is talking about how she's alone. And that's the one that punches me because it was originally a little different and we had to change it. And I understand why we had to change it. So in that scene, she's saying, like love is when you feel alone, you're not really alone, and realizing you never really were alone. And in the background of that picture, originally, there was going to be a ghostly image of Bale and Breha, but it looked too much like a Force ghost, and they're not Force ghosts. And so I totally understand why we had to cut it. But in my head, they're still there. And so that's the scene where I cry.
That would have crushed me.
No, I still have like the early draft of it where the artist Sophie Lee like sketched them in, and it's gorgeous, and I weep every time I see it.
Let's talk about our wonderful illustrator. What was that like to get to work, to get to kind of do that collaboration? Because like again, something pretty unique compared to what you've done before, but also like it turned out amazingly.
Oh, cute. It's so adorable. I mean, we have Ewoks and Walklings, so of course it's going to be cute, but
Mm.
it was even cuter than I anticipated. It was fun coming up with like the images for it and the research and like the reference photos that I would send her. Like it took us, there's one scene where Leia is holding a Walkling and you can see like she's holding it on like her shoulder and its butt is there. And I had to find reference pictures of an Ewok butt to send because we're like, did it have a tail? Are there cheeks? Like, how much detail are we getting into here? So that sort of detail was absolutely hilarious. And so I'm sure she just thinks I'm the most unhinged person ever because I'm like, here's 3 pages about Ewok butts and for like one illustration. But it worked out.
It really did. And it really is with this kind of book. It's not just the writing, although the writing is both important and beautiful in this book, but it's also paired with these amazing illustrations. Like that also made me cry because I'm like it's almost like, obviously the entire book all the way through and every page is in the same style, but it also feels very different from page to page and it kind of keeps you very interested. Like if you are a kid and you're ready for the page to turn and you're like, what's going to be next? Like I really had that feeling like, oh, this is so exciting to have
Oh.
this imagery like this.
I really, really wanted to do something that had like movement to it. Like I didn't
Mm.
want them to just be pictures of people standing around. So my favorite of this is there is a scene where the walklings have turned an ATST into basically a playground. And they're talking about how like love can be fearful and there's fear involved, but you just have to change your perspective of it. So you have these things that terrorize them in the movie,
Mm.
but now the little children are like swinging on it and sliding down the leg. And I just loved making that one. And that one actually to show Sophie how I thought it could work, I had my kid make a Lego scene. And so we used my Lego ATST and our little Lego Ewoks and like made pictures of it for her.
That is so fun. That
It
is
was it
so
was really a
fun.
lot of fun to make that. My kid is so proud of it too. He's like, that's my page.
Oh my God. That is That's perfect. That is perfect. It's perfect that like they get to be a part of it just a little
I
bit.
know. Although he was a little upset that his name's not on the cover. He's like, I
No,
helped you with this. I should get credit. But he really was. I mean, it was a really special experience because he saw me working on it and like he would sit beside me and I would be making sketches or coming up with like the lines of the pages. And he made his own Star Wars picture book beside me. And so like now I have the sketches I made that turned into a real book, and then I have the sketches he made and this bonding memory. It was like the perfect age to be working with my son on this.
I'm gonna cry again. It's perfect. It's perfect. That is just like that's one of those like behind the scenes things where I'm
Yeah.
like I can picture it and it's perfect. And it makes the book even more special, I feel like, because like knowing that that's such a good memory for you in creating the book.
Yeah. I know. It really also reminds me of like how generational Star Wars can be. Like
Mm.
I've always loved Star Wars. I don't remember not loving Star Wars. I grew up with it. I love Star Wars all my life, but I love it in a different way now because I'm experiencing it with my kid on a totally different level of like he likes different things for me because I really love the Jedi and the Rebel phases, and he really likes the Clone Wars and the ships. And like we talk back and forth about it, and he has theories on it, and getting to experience it with him has just I don't know, it didn't rekindle my love because my love for Star Wars never faded, but it made it burn in a different way that is so much more impactful.
I've always thought it's really interesting to interact with like other Star Wars fans, people who like Star Wars, and seeing how different things in the same story stand out to different people. And like you can be a fan of the same movie, but like, oh, I loved this part because of this, and like, oh, I barely noticed that, but this was really cool. And um,
Right.
yeah, it's just I think Star Wars is so big in that even when you do have overlapping interests, it's like everyone has a different perspective on these stories because they're drawn to different things.
And it's really kind of amazing that different like ages can like it, different
Yeah.
interest. There's something for everyone,
Mhm.
and Star Wars meets you where you are,
Yeah.
whether you're a kid or an adult, or you like spaceship battles or the like wizardry of the Jedi. Like there's something for everybody, and it's kind of amazing that way.
It really is. I can definitely think of like things that I watched in Star Wars as a kid that like are seem completely different to me now because you really do have that different perspective of like, oh, like I've lived a lot of life now. I look at that differently than I used to. Um,
Yes.
and it's usually a good thing. Um,
Yeah, it gives you the new perspective. Like when I was a kid, well, when Phantom Menace came out, I was like teenager, preteen era. And so when I was that age, I didn't like it as much. But now that I'm older, I can look back on it and be like, oh, well, actually, now I do get why they acted this way and things like that. So your opinions also shift and change.
yeah, we love that. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm a huge like supporter of like rewatching and rereading things because I think
Oh,
like
for sure.
with books especially like you could read the same book 3 or 4 times at different points in your life and it might feel like a completely different book to you because you're looking at the same story having had maybe different experiences. Um,
Hmm.
which is why I love books because like the books themselves don't change but we do. So,
That is so, so, so true. Yeah.
um let's go back a little bit and talk about how this book, every Star Wars book kind of has like a story behind it
Hmm.
as to like how it happened or why it happened. And again, this book being very unique compared to like the other things you've worked on and a lot of other books that have come out recently. Um, how?
Yeah, it is pretty amazing how it came about. Um, it started off, I don't think I would have had this book if I hadn't had The Princess and the Scoundrel.
Mhm.
So because The Princess and the Scoundrel, which covers the wedding and the honeymoon, like the first adventure of Han and Leia as a married couple, like that whole novel, and it's an adult novel, because that existed, the Star Wars powers that be had come up with this idea of like, what if we translate this into something about love? Because Han and Leia really is a love story, and translate that into something for children, but something also that adults could appreciate. And that was actually a really big challenge for me because I read a lot of books to my kid, but there are books just for a kid. And this one is supposed to be for a kid, but also for the adults and something that you can find something at any age for. So it was a bit of a challenge with that and figuring out which parts to highlight that would be important for both sets of people was something that I had to really kind of hone in on and kind of figure out like these are the universal things about love and these are the things that kids will appreciate and these are the things that adults will appreciate and these are the things that everyone appreciates about love. So it was a lot of love.
It was. And there were definitely I pulled out different quotes from it and I was like, I feel that. For sure. Um and I mean that was one of the reasons I got so emotional is because like from my perspective like certain things like I understand that in a way that I may not have a couple of years ago. And then of course you have like things that like kids are like, oh, like that makes sense. Like that thing about love, I get that. So it
And there's
worked.
a lot of people who've asked me like, how does it feel to write something about Han and Leia and knowing how they end up in the
Mm,
sequels? And to me, like whatever happened to them in the end did not change the fact that they were in love.
yes.
Like their love was real and it changed over time, but that doesn't mean that they didn't have love or their love was invalidated because it changed. And that was one thing I really, really wanted to kind of tap into. Like part of love is living in the moment and understanding what you have now and knowing even if it changes, that doesn't make it less real.
Um, I was thinking about that actually because we do, have more context now for their relationship
Hmm.
later on beyond Return of the Jedi. And like it is interesting to think about like writing stories about, this part of their relationship, knowing the ending. But I think that's may even be even more interesting and more fun to do because like you might know the ending, you might know how it ends up, but like going back to this point, um, where they are, you know, as good as you can be, you know, having just fought a war and being newlyweds and all of that.
Yes.
But
And besides which, like lots of people think that Han and Leia were broken up by the end, and like they were just temporarily separated.
yes.
Like we don't know the full context. They're fine. They're one in the Force now.
Exactly. Exactly. That's it. Um yeah. Sometimes let's just think about it like that.
Yes.
Um Love is one of those things in Star Wars that like it's easy to think about Star Wars and go, "Oh, Star Wars isn't a love story or it's not about love." But actually it kind of like that is what Star Wars is.
Oh yeah.
And you know, it's woven all throughout like even if it's not romantic love or even if it's not traditional, it's kind of like the whole it's everywhere. It is the reason that things happen in Star Wars. Um and why how do I want to ask this? I don't like how I phrased this and when I wrote it down. Um, why do you feel like it's so important to celebrate love in Star Wars?
One of my favorite quotes from all the movies is when Rose Tycho was saying, like, love, we will win this by fighting for what we love and for what we believe in. It's not a matter of like defeating the enemy, it's a matter of protecting what we love. And I mean, that really is the root of every story in Star Wars, but it's also the root of every story in life. Like
Mm.
what we do it for the people we love and the things we want to protect. And that really is the heart of all of it. So it whether it's romantic love, like you said, or any other type of relationship, that's what the heart of Star Wars is to me. That's what it's always been to me. It's like you fight for what you love. That's the difference between the rebels and the Empire. The Empire is trying to control people, and they're not doing anything out of love. They're doing it out of fear and control. And the
Mhm.
rebels are fighting for love in whatever context that is, whether it's the love of their home planet or their friends or romance or anything else. Like it all comes back to love.
It does. Um, and I think like it's nice to think about that because, you know, these are all stories about wars and the stars, but like what keeps you going when you're in the middle of that? It's you love
Exactly.
someone, you love something, you love yourself. I don't know what it is. It could be anything. Uh,
I mean, I really think that Andor nailed that theme as
mm,
well. Like the way that Andor developed of that difference between apathy and violence and fighting for love is a through line in Andor, but it's also throughout all the rest of Star Wars as well. It's just really, really highlighted in that particular story. And it that is really the heart of it for me.
such a good show.
It is. I can't wait for the second season.
I know we're almost there.
I know, we're gonna cry so much
Oh, we are. Look at Star Wars just making us cry everywhere,
all the time.
all the time. You have to have stories that make you feel things, though. I
Exactly.
always am like, people are like, "Oh, I didn't like this story. It made me feel angry," and I'm like, "Good. Maybe it was
Yes, at least you
supposed
felt
to."
something.
Yes.
Yeah. I would so much rather somebody be angry or hate a book than be apathetic towards it.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's something that I wrote, have a feeling,
Yes.
have an emotion.
Yes. You've won as a storyteller if someone read something that you wrote and felt something.
Yeah,
Because that's really no matter what the feeling is, the point of stories is to make us feel things because either you're forced to think about something that you weren't thinking about, or you're looking at something a different way, or whatever it might be. And like, feel the things. If you threw the book
exactly.
across the room, it's not because it was a bad book, it's because you felt something.
Yes.
I did not throw this book across the room, for the record.
Good. Because it's
It's a
really
very
big. It
nice
would probably
book.
hurt your wall.
It is very big and it's very nice. Oh, um, I'll ask you one more question. You may like it. You may not. It's fine. Um, a lot of this book, goes through like, what does love mean, or what does it mean to love someone?
Mhm.
What does love mean to you?
Ooh. Well, one of the things that I really liked about writing this book is the idea that there isn't one definition, that it is this evolving thing and it constantly is changing and it means different things at different times in your life. So love to me is, huh, it is the evolution. It's not a static thing. It's not a singular definition. Like when I think of my husband, I love him now, and I loved him when I met him however many years ago because we were high school sweethearts. And I loved him when we got married, and I loved him when my son was born, but I loved him in all these different ways that have changed every time. And it's something that is hard to define, but it is constant in the way it always changes. Because if your love is static, it can't grow and it can't shift as time changes. So that is my cop-out answer, where I say there is not a definition.
But it's also the perfect definition at the same time.
Thank you.
I don't always do this at the end of interviews, but because the social media landscape has changed so much and will possibly continue to change very quickly. If people want to find you and the things that you are doing, where can they do that?
So the static place to go is bethrevis.com. I'll have everything updated there. On social media, I'm currently on Instagram and Threads primarily, and my handle is at Beth Revis. But we'll see if this billionaire makes me mad and I shift somewhere else. So.
Oh, I'm so conflicted about Instagram lately. I'm like, but it's my biggest platform, but also, like, what do we do?
Do we have to suffer through Zuck's midlife crisis?
Oh, I mean, apparently. Where else do you go? I don't know.
I know. It's like, pick your billionaire.
Don't say that.
No.
But it's also true.
There's no ethical billionaires.
If there's anything, that you'd like to promote that's not Star Wars, you are also free to do that.
I do have another science fiction series happening right now. The first 2 books of the trilogy are out, and the third one will be out in April. It's called the Chaotic Orbit series, and the last book is Last Chance to Save the World. And they are also about love, but in a very, very different way. I say that my main character, Ada Lamar, is a little bit like Dr. Aphra. So for my Star Wars people, I know y'all get that. Like, she's a little bit Dr. Aphra. She's very mercenary. She's going to get the job done. And then the guy that she's falling in love with is a Sherlock character. And so it's like a cat and mouse sort of romance in that way, but also I set a lot of things on fire and blow a lot of shit up. So there's a combination of things happening.
Excellent. I can't wait. Thank you so much for talking to me about love and Han and Leia and Star Wars and books that I think we need more of. We need more books like this.
I agree.
That's my plea. Sure.
From your mouth to the Star Wars powers that be ears.
Yes, to all of them that are listening to this specifically.
They better. This is one of the really, really good podcasts. They need to be listening to it.
This has been fun. And of course, at some point, for some reason, you will probably be back. And I look forward to that.
Excellent.
Now This Is Lit is part of the Faraway Fandom Network. It is produced by Devor Montum and written, hosted, and edited by me. Jose Jimenez designed our podcast art. You can keep up with the show on Substack and Now This Is Lit, and find the show wherever you get your podcasts. There are so many ways you can support the show, and all of those ways are linked in the show description. The newest way is to become a member of our Patreon. For $1 a month, you can get access to an exclusive show and a sticker. And if we get 500 people to support the Patreon per month, I can hire an editor. That would be great for me, and maybe for you too. So if you'd like to support the show with just $1 a month, you can do it that way. Or you can just keep listening and sharing the episodes. That is also helpful, and I appreciate it. For more book reviews and Star Wars Book Celebration, follow Star Wars Book Reviews on Instagram and TikTok.